Dad Rocks, a podcast for dads who love music, made by dads who love music.
Hello and welcome to Dad Rocks, the podcast about being a dad and loving music and how the two intersect in our lives. I'm your host Josh, and today's show is one of a three-part mini-series on a very personal subject for me, my father, David Frisch. So if you're not interested in hearing about my dad, feel free to skip these episodes. But I do hope you stick around, as this was an important project for me to undertake, as you'll soon hear. If you've been a regular listener of this show, you'll know that my father was a huge influence on my life in almost every way possible. But music was probably the biggest influence my dad had on me. From the music he played in the house and in the car, to taking me to shows, to encouraging me to play music, and then eventually finding ways for my bands to perform, he had a major impact on the musical part of my life. Though he never took any formal music lessons, he had the gift of having a musical ear and taught himself how to play harmonica, then guitar, and later the dobro. On top of all of that, he was a great singer and could harmonize with almost anyone. And he loved playing music, whether in an informal jam or a scheduled gig or just for my brother and I. Music was what made him truly happy, and it was a major outlet for him, especially after a long day's work in his chiropractic practice. So why am I choosing to do this three-part mini-series on him now? Well, on February 13th, 2003, my father passed away from a heart attack, making today, if you're listening to this podcast on the day that it was released, the 20th anniversary of his death. I figured now is as good a time as any to talk to people whom my dad played music with throughout his life. The way I initially approached this was to break his performing career into three eras. His time with his high school band Powdered Milk in the late 60s, his time with the almost original synthetic urban swamp grass jug band in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and then later in the few years before his death, and his time with the band The Old Man Jam in the mid to late 90s. While my initial approach was to do something in some chronological order, two of the conversations cover multiple time periods of my dad's life, so I decided to release all three episodes at the same time, and let the listener decide how they wanted to listen to the episodes. On this episode, I discuss my dad's high school band, Powdered Milk, with his former bandmate, Jack Schwartz. Though I heard Jack's name in many conversations when my dad talked about his band, this was actually the first time I had ever talked to Jack. As you'll hear in the conversation, Jack moved to California during his college years and did not keep in touch with his buddies back in New Jersey while he was working in the music industry, specifically for Fantasy Records. For that reason, Jack wasn't even on my radar to talk about my dad's high school playing days. The only reason I even got in contact with Jack was that another guest in this miniseries, Glenn Taylor, mentioned that he had Jack's number and would reach out to him for me. I thank Glenn so much for that. It was honestly great to talk to Jack and to hear stories about my dad, their band, and some of the shows they saw together, and also to learn about Jack's career in the music industry. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Jack Schwartz. So since I literally know almost nothing about you, especially in your your adult life, can you just quickly give a bio of who you are, what you did?
Sure. Grew up in Passaic and Clifton. Always had a love of music, and I found out early in my life that I was able to play by ear, and I think that's the biggest gift God has ever given me. The ability to play by ear. I still play almost every day. In the band, I was playing bass because George was a better guitar player than I was, and I didn't want to play rhythm. So I learned how to play bass. All through the band years, I played bass, but bass is a difficult instrument to play by yourself. So I did learn to play guitar all along the way. And it is, to this day, therapy for me. Playing is something I need to do, or I'm not a good person.
I understand that. So,
And being in the band was the band went through a lot of development. We had a number of people in the band, but the core, bass, drums, keyboards, guitar, and your dad as the lead singer and harp player,
Yeah.
stayed very stable. But we had horns at one time. We had a horn section, and this was when Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago had just come out. And the thing that held us all together was we all loved the blues.
Mm.
And everything came from there. And I still believe in that. Your dad and I were very close. And along with Charlie, everybody in the band was close. Um, George, the lead guitar player, who was a great improviser, he was always a little bit on the fringe. He wasn't as close with everybody else. And although I still am occasionally in touch with George, he has now a jazz podcast
Oh,
that
wow.
he does. I don't know whether it's twice a month or weekly. I think it's more like once or twice a month. And I have no doubt that if he kept it up, he's a phenomenal guitar player. To this, I would assume if he kept it up, he's got to be a phenomenal guitar player.
Mm.
But playing with your dad, I learned how to play with others. I learned how to play my instrument. We learned the best thing was learning to listen to one another. And the fact that you have a podcast about dad rock, I was the first one in my family with any musical direction.
Mm.
And I taught my son,
Oh, lost you there for a minute.
who Adam is now 32 years old. I taught Adam to play guitar, and he is living in Boston. Excuse me, he's in New York City now, and married, and has been into metal his whole life.
Oh, I
don't
missed that.
understand
Sorry.
it.
Yeah, I lost you. So you said he was into metal. Is that right? Did I hear that correctly?
It just
Glitched.
glitched for a second.
Yeah.
I was saying my son is into metal
Yeah.
his whole life, and I think it was a rebellion against the music he loved. But he's actually gotten really good at it. He can play things I couldn't even begin to play. His speed with his right hand is unbelievable, but I am a little concerned about his hearing because that's and one of the things after I graduated high school, I was in school for a couple of years in Washington, D.C. Law is in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And although I was never fully sold on it, I did go to school as a political science major, and I quickly added a music minor. And in the middle of my junior year, I came home and told my parents, I can't do this law thing. It's not me. I'm moving to California to be in the music business.
Oh, wow.
So that was when I was about 20, almost 21 years old. And I moved to California. I had been going out to California for summertime and for winter breaks to work in the warehouse at Fantasy Records.
Oh, so I got a question for you later on because you may be the linchpin to this lingering questions, which I'll get to later.
We'll get to that. So I started out in the warehouse and hung out by the studio doors and let them know I was interested in learning to be an audio engineer. Or back in the record business, they would call it a mixer.
Mm-hmm.
And after I came home and told my parents I was going out to California, I went out to California, transferred to UC San Diego, which at the time was the only school in the country that had an electronics and a music program combined.
Oh, wow.
To teach people how to be mixers and to teach people about electronics. So I went to school there, and then I was offered a job in the sound department at Fantasy Records. And I ended up being a staff mixer up there for 10 years. Went through the Creedence Clearwater
I was just
thing.
gonna
That was
ask. Just was just gonna ask about that.
first session I ever worked on was a Creedence Clearwater
Holy
session.
moly!
And I was a gopher. All I did was move amps around and listen
Yeah,
to John Fogerty. But it was
that's
an
amazing.
education. But while I was at Fantasy, the great thing about Fantasy, it was three labels: Fantasy,
Mhm.
Prestige, and
Yep.
Milestone, which were both jazz labels.
Right. Right.
So in my 10 years there, I got to work with fantastic, top of the line jazz musicians: Cannonball Adderley, McCoy Tyner, Sonny Rollins,
Holy
um,
moly!
Hubert Laws, on and on and on. Uh, Burrell worked on a number of albums of his. And it made me realize that I was never going to be a professional musician in that sense.
Hmm.
I didn't have the talent those guys had. And I would come home from doing sessions and I had a difficult time picking up my guitar because I wasn't at that level.
Yeah.
And although, music is not a competitive thing, I wanted to be the best I could. And working at Fantasy was an education that unmatched. And in 1979, I moved down to LA because there was more rock and roll happening in LA.
Hmm.
And that was another 15 years in the record business as an independent. And I also worked on staff at some studios in LA and went through all of that rock and roll period in Los Angeles that was now referred to as classic rock.
Hmm.
When when the music changed and disco came in and new music started to come in, that wasn't as it didn't hit my heart as much. I got into the union and started to do sound for television and film,
Oh,
which
nice.
lasted another 20 years. So I had about a 35-year career as a sound mixer, and I wouldn't change it for a minute. It was, it never was work. I would wake up in the morning happy to go to the studio. It was different every day. I felt blessed that I was getting paid to do what I love to do,
Hmm.
and it was wonderful. So
That's
that was,
awesome.
and I kept at it until about the year 2000. And then I got tired of being in rooms without windows, and I wanted to save my hearing,
Yeah.
and made a change at that point.
Nice. That's. I mean, and then I think you went. I don't want to assume, but I saw somewhere that you went into, I guess, finance at that point, or financials or something like that. Were you working for Morgan Stanley or something?
I did.
Yeah.
I retired about a year and a half ago, but my financial advisor, when I made the change away from the arts, my financial advisor um, knew that I was interested, and somehow he saw some aptitude, and I had an offer from another firm, and I went to Ben and I asked him, "What do you think?" And he basically said, "It's not a bad offer, but I'd rather see you come to Morgan Stanley, and if you can prove yourself, we'll be partners."
Oh
And
wow.
that's what happened. So I was at Morgan Stanley for 15 years. It wasn't like being in the studio. It wasn't as gratifying. It didn't feel, I didn't get up every day raring to get to work and having it
Yeah.
different every day. But it made my retirement much more comfortable.
Yeah. I get that. I'm a public school teacher, so one of those things where
Ah,
we, I made a choice to have a healthier work life balance, but and hopefully a pension later on. We'll see in New Jersey that's questionable at the moment. It, and I mean, that's an amazing, just your story is amazing because again, there's gonna be a point that I'm gonna come to later regarding what my dad told me, and maybe it is true about what happened to you guys after high school. But so the first thing I want to ask you was, since you live out in California, and at the time we had cell phones, but there was texting wasn't around. 20 years ago, when how did you hear about my father's passing?
From my brother. My brother lives in North Caldwell,
Oh, okay.
and he called me and told me, I guess he read about it, and he told me what happened.
Yeah.
And I did send a card with a note. And as I said, it really affected me. One of the mistakes I made when I moved to California is I didn't keep up with my friends back east as much as I should have.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a number of years when I just wasn't in touch with your dad. And when that happened, uh, it made me realize the fragility of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I never let that happen again.
Yeah.
I learned a lesson because I felt horrible.
Yeah, I know the feeling. It's just that's one of the things that I learned from my father too, because he kept, granted, life. It's hard. I'm realizing that now. Like some of my best friends from college, I went to University of Maryland, just like him, and but
Yep.
one of my best friends lives in Southern Virginia. Our sons are 6 days apart. When we never get together, they have a great time. But we don't. It's hard to see each other, but I make it a point. I mean, it's a lot easier now to stay connected, but I call them. Like we have a phone conversation every month.
Good.
I try to stay in contact with all my friends because I realize how important that stuff is, and that was the one thing that I learned from my father is that having strong connections to family and friends is extremely important. And
Not much more important than that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to put the work in to keep those alive. I mean, I just recently reconnected with a buddy at our 20th, I guess it was the 21st high school reunion. And he, we actually came on the podcast a couple of times, and we were just talking and reliving playing music back when we were middle school and high school together. And it's just good to, even if it's not constant, every once in a while, just keeping that connection open is so important, because you never know when you're going to need someone, or you might be traveling and you're like, hey, I'm in town, you want to get together, and it rekindles something. So, and that's, that was another question I was going to ask is, when was the last time you and my father either talked or saw each other?
Josh, I hate to say it, but it was far too long. When I would come home, I would get together with David and Charlie and Andy. But boy, it was probably in the 80s that I last spoke with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
So your dad passed around 2003.
Yep.
Uh, um, so that was, again, one of those things that I could have done a better job.
It's interesting where life takes you and how life, comes back around. But obviously, I really wish that he had stayed alive. Obviously, I wish he was still alive today for tons of different reasons. But it would have been really interesting to see if he had lived at least until, your generation got on Facebook, how many connections how many people he would have reconnected with, and maybe who knows what would have happened in terms of maybe Powdered Milk would have gotten together and played one more gig. I don't know,
Well, I know I'm still in touch with Andy very often. We're pretty close. In fact, our mothers were in the delivery room together. I was born on February 28th. Another guy from Passaic, Greg Masters, was born on February 29th. It was leap year that year. And Andy was born on March 1st. So he's my oldest friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're still in touch. I did get together with Charlie. Oh, it's probably about 12 or 15 years ago. and Charlie's just not interested in music at all anymore.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was really surprised.
that was the one thing I remember my dad saying. Having he and my dad were close, and like
Yeah,
we
very.
knew the families growing up. Like myself and his daughter Megan played when we were younger, but as we got older, not as much. But that was the one thing I was always like, oh, Charlie played music, like. My dad never seemed to go to concerts with him, never seemed to he never came out to any gig. It was just kind of, I mean, people
Yeah.
change and stuff. But
Oh,
he
Josh,
always,
did your dad go to, was your dad at Woodstock?
I was going to ask you about Woodstock.
Good.
Well, yeah, and we could talk about it now. So since you brought it up, so that was the one of the questions I want to ask you. And we can get to the concerts later. You know what? Let's get to because there's a bunch of questions I have, and I want to see if you know about them. But
Sure.
yeah, he was at Woodstock, but he kind of wasn't at Woodstock. So I wanted to ask you about what happened with that. So. Did you grow? So I was looking at your Facebook. Did you grow up? Did you live in Clifton or did you live in Passaic when you were a teen, or where did you grow up? Because I'm assuming you went to Hebrew school together, or I'm assuming you're Jewish. Yes, right.
Oh, Schwartz.
Okay. So I'm assuming you guys went to the same synagogue, same Hebrew school. I just didn't know if you went to school together as well.
Well, I was born in Passaic, lived on Harrison Street until I guess I was about 8 years old when we moved to Clifton,
Mm-hmm.
off Passaic Avenue in Clifton. But I always maintained my friendships from Passaic. And somehow we put a band together from people both Passaic and Clifton.
Hmm. Now,
But
and yeah, because I know my dad always talked about he was in, with I guess either Hebrew school or they had a youth group, a Jewish youth group and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's
yeah,
how you guys kept stayed
probably
friends.
we were in day camp together, the
Yeah.
Y day camp, and um, yeah, we spent a lot of time hanging out and having fun.
Yeah. So I've heard some stories, but what was my dad like as a kid, as a teenager?
Well, your dad was, I'm trying to put this in perspective. Your dad and Charlie both had older siblings,
Right.
whereas me and Andy and George were the oldest. So we would learn a lot from them simply because they had older siblings and were able to have experiences and be able to watch their siblings make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But your dad was, he always had a real level head on his shoulders. And when things were getting crazy in the 60s, your dad never let it get, your dad was always in control. Your dad was always in control and never allowed things to get out of hand. He was one of the level-headed ones
Hmm.
within the group. And although, let's see, everyone in the group was Jewish, um, and I don't think any of us were really, really crazy, but everybody was experimenting in so many different ways back then. And your dad was always pretty cautious. He was always
Hmm.
had a level head on his shoulders.
Interesting. That was one thing that I did learn later because he was he claimed that he stopped smoking after or when he got to chiropractic school, and then I found out later he never stopped smoking weed until he passed away. It was
Interesting.
yeah, it was interesting. Like, and it was my mom told me later on that because he did a very good job of hiding that from us because he never did it around us at all, and he would always abstain from, he would drink every once, he would drink, but he wouldn't like turn down everything else. So that was ever put in front of him.
I did the same thing raising my kids. To this day, I smoke pot.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm better off with it.
Yeah.
It calms me down. It makes me more patient. I don't lose my temper
Yeah.
but I'm talking about a couple 3 puffs before I go to bed.
Oh yeah, yeah, no. It was just,
That's
it was more of those things, that I know that later on in college and stuff that he experimented, but it's good, from when I was growing up, he always seemed to be like that, like you said, level-headed, thoughtful, conscious, and even the fact that he was thoughtful about how he acted around myself and my brother and other people, like in front of his family. That's that tells me that it makes sense. What you're saying. So it's great to hear. And so, how did the band start? How did what would become Powdered Milk start?
Boy, that's a tough one. I know that your dad, I don't think Charlie, but I think your dad was playing a lot of music with Robbie Gable.
Yes,
They
that's
they
it.
lived on the
Across the
block,
street.
right?
They lived. I think they either across the street or next to each other or something like that. But yeah.
Right. And um, Robbie had a lot of different really nice instruments, and somehow maybe it was through the Y. I'm trying to remember some of this
Mhm.
stuff, Josh, but somehow we all got together, and Robbie didn't really fit in
Hmm.
with the musical direction. And the one thing that was amazing was how quickly we all picked it up.
Hmm.
We would every week we would go down to the record store in Passaic and look at the new albums that had just been released. Every week we went as a group, and everybody would buy something different. And we go home and we listen to it, and then we get together as a group and say, check this out. And then we learned it.
Hmm.
And we developed really quickly. So somehow Robbie was no longer in the scene, and just the central group of us, the five of us, were really, really dedicated to learning how to play our instruments
Hmm.
and play in a group. And I think we all learned a lot about um, life in terms of being in a group and learning how to get along and share and not letting one person take over, but we all had input into what we were going to play and how it was going to be played. And it was a great experience. Powdered Milk, to this day, I think back on it, and the Battle of the Bands and the Sweet 16s and the school and the college dances that we would play. And I think I'm listening in my head. I think we were pretty good. I do remember we went into the studio once, and this is what happened that made me realize I wanted to be a sound mixer. We went in the studio and we did a song, and went into the control room to take a listen, and it sounded horrible. And I knew we sounded better than that
Yeah.
because I could hear us in the room. I knew we sounded better than that. And I looked at the console in front of me, and I looked at the tape machine, and I looked around, and I said to myself, I know we're better than this. If I've got to learn, the problem is in here in the
Hmm.
control room. If I've got to learn this, I will. And I ended up learning it, and I found out that I was probably better at it than playing guitar.
Yeah.
And it became a profession.
Nice.
And to this day, I love being in the studio.
Yeah.
I still feel like I could do a tracking date. Uh, but that was it. I do remember us going in the studio the first time and it not sounding as good as I thought we were. But I remember the articles in the Herald News about us playing Battle of the Bands and things like that, and a lot of bar mitzvahs.
Yeah. Do you have, so I had asked Charlie this a few years ago. Do you have any memorabilia, any pictures, anything from the group? Because my dad didn't have anything. So, and Charlie said the only thing he had was a picture of him and my dad, which he sent of them as teenagers. So I didn't know if you had any pictures from that era.
What I don't have any pictures, but I do have our business card, and I have a couple of articles from the Herald magazine about us playing in the Battle of Bands in Clifton.
Oh, wow.
So I will get copies of that to you.
Great. Thank you
I
so much.
wish I had pictures or tapes or something.
So you guys never took home the tape from that recording session? You just threw it.
I don't know what happened to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I should have that. I've got a garage of 2-inch tapes and tapes of groups that I worked with over the years. I've got
Yeah.
tapes of I got a lot of tapes in my
Yeah.
garage. I just don't know what to do with. I don't
Yeah.
know what, there's no value, I don't think.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's
I wish
good.
I had a tape of powdered milk.
Yeah.
But back then technology wasn't as available
Right. No,
as
I
it is.
understand. Yeah, yeah. And now for me, I keep everything. Like I'm a pack rat in that way. Like videos, just recordings, everything that I've ever done. I'm just like, I just keep it in a file. Like I remember sending, when my band from high school and college, we did like a small reunion show, one off. We were going through like material. And I just found all of these like old random, recordings that we just did in our basement. And,
Yeah.
it's fun to go back and look on. So you were
One
saying, go
one
ahead.
thing I do remember about your dad, I do remember there was one day we went down to the record store and the first Led Zeppelin album had just come out. And I bought it. I went home and I listened to it. And the next day we had a rehearsal and I brought it in. I said, "This record is unbelievable. We need to learn communication breakdown." And the following week, we all went to the Fillmore, East.
This.
And the Fillmore, if I remember, it was Blue Cheer and Special Guest. And the special guest came on first. And we were sitting near the front. And the curtains went up and they started to play Communication Breakdown. And special guest was Led Zeppelin.
Mm.
And we knew the song already. We had already learned it. It was us. Great memories.
I got to ask, since you brought that up, this was a question I was going to ask later, and I was about shows, but you know what, you brought it up, and so my dad always told a story, and actually Andy Polner, he did verify this. Were you with them at the show that they walked out on Led Zeppelin? Because my dad claims that he saw Led Zeppelin maybe at MSG after their second album, and walked out on them and could never listen to them again because they were so bad.
No, I was not at that show. I was probably, by that point, I'm probably out in California already.
Okay, because
wow, I'm shocked.
Yeah, I mean, you got to ask Andy about it because like
I will.
I tell this to everyone and they're like, really? Like I grew up never listening to, I grew up having this negative feelings towards Zeppelin because I always idolized my dad. Whenever he influenced me a lot.
Right.
And anytime we heard Zeppelin on the radio, he'd switch the station and turn. He was very. Wow. He was very, like, he held grudges. It was very interesting. But he always said how bad they were. So I didn't really get into them actually, it took until I listened to the Black Crowes and Jimmy Page doing that live album that they did, and then got into Zeppelin that way, kind of. And so I didn't know if you were there, but I guess he saw them. I mean, I guess he must have been there too at the Fillmore. Or I mean, maybe, I don't know, because I feel like if he had seen them twice and maybe he would have known how. I don't know.
Maybe he was not at the Fillmore that time, but I have a friend of mine is a professional musician, and we were together a couple of weeks ago, and somehow Jimmy Page came up. And he said, "Oh, I can't stand listening to him. He's always the tuning and he's sloppy. He's a sloppy guitar player."
That's what my dad said too about him.
And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, everyone. My dad always said that Jimmy Page and Pete Townsend were better rhythm guitar players than they were lead players. He said they were rhythm guitar players trying to be lead players. That's what his take was.
Pat and I went to see The Who about a month ago at the Hollywood Bowl with a full orchestra. And yes, Pete Townsend is only a rhythm guitar player. In fact, the first time I went to the Fillmore, The Who was the the lead act. And they started to play My Generation. And Townsend's guitar strap broke, the guitar fell to the floor, and the solo kept playing. No one talks about that stuff. And that was like 1968, 69.
Oh, wow.
And I was shocked. I was so disappointed.
Oh,
But
wow.
at the Hollywood Bowl, lead singer, he can
Daltrey, yeah.
Daltrey can still sing.
Yeah.
And with the orchestra, it was a great concert. But Townsend is known for his he started the power chord.
Yeah.
That's what I think of when I think of Townsend.
Yeah. I mean, my dad liked the Who. He made sure I remember him buying Live at Leeds on CD, and he would just blast it in the car all the time and stuff like that.
Well, let me ask you, both my kids, I have a son, Adam's 32, my daughter's your age, and neither of them like the Who.
Interesting.
They do like some stuff from my age, but nobody their age, none of their friends, none of them liked the Who at all. I never got it. I never understood.
I'm not like a huge Who fan, but like I definitely like their stuff, especially up through, the mid 70s stuff, and definitely like, Who's Next, Tommy, Live at Leeds, that era, especially the early 70s stuff. I mean, I was also, like I said, most of the stuff my father played for us, I took to heart. I was like, if Dad likes it, then it's good. That was my feeling. My brother's actually a professional. He's in an EDM group. He's a professional DJ essentially, and
what does that
in Vegas
stand
tonight.
for?
So electronic dance music.
Okay.
He was much more open-minded than I was. Like he took in everything, and I was much more like, whereas, like I said, like I didn't listen to Zeppelin till I was, much older than I probably should have been listening to, or should have been like a teenager. Same thing with Pink Floyd. And my dad wasn't a big Pink Floyd fan either, so I didn't get hip to them till much later.
One thing I remember about your dad was when it came, everybody would bring in the music that they wanted the band to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And your dad was more outside than many of us, in the sense that he brought in Zappa.
I was going to ask him because
we played Zappa.
I still have his Hot Rats vinyl. He got me a little bit. I could, Zappa is Zappa, and he tried to get us into Zappa. I think for me, when he showed us 200 Motels, that kind of like I put Zappa in the back. It was just too much for me, especially as a teenager.
It's a tough one. To this day, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
When I lived in the Hollywood Hills, Zappa was a neighbor, and I would hear the music all the time. And I have a number of friends that have played and been mixers for Zappa, and he had a wonderful reputation. And he was a much better guitar player than most people realize.
Oh yeah, the
documentary
documentary
far ahead of his time.
That documentary that came out about him was very, very eye opening and interesting and really cool. I forget what, so going back to the band a little bit, my dad always said he really never had too much musical talent in terms of like he didn't play any instruments till much later. I guess in his 20s. So he just sang. He said played tambourine. And did he play harmonica at that young age? Because I know he really didn't get into it too much until college. But
he was just starting. And I think we did a lot of blues. We did a lot of blues projects, and he would play that. I mean, playing blues, that's how most harpists start.
Yeah.
Was playing blues harp. And he did some of that with us. But your dad had some of the best innate talent. He sang.
He had a great ear. Yeah.
He had a great ear. He really sang well, and I'm not surprised that he got into playing an instrument the way he did. I've heard so much from Andy and from Glenn, who I've gotten to be close with. Glenn's told me so much about what it was like playing with the Coots. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I guess he was not the typical front man. He was you guys were like a unit. Was there any was he or were any of you like the leader of the group or in terms of or who did the bookings and all that kind of stuff?
We had a manager,
Oh wow.
Teddy. I'll think of his name. Might be on the business card, but we actually had a manager. He was just a friend of somebody's, and he would book us, and he would handle all of that.
Oh wow.
I don't think there really was a leader. I think that we all added something. Some of us may have been a little bit more vocal, probably me. And But we all contributed. There wasn't someone who was it wasn't someone's group,
Yeah.
not at all.
That's good to hear. Because being in bands myself growing up it was always we didn't have, and that was one thing I was going to ask too is I don't out in California might have been different for I don't know if your kids obviously your son plays music, but growing up for me at least in the time that I was growing up, my brother got in on the punk scene, so it was a little bit easier for him to find gigs, but we couldn't find gigs anywhere. There was my dad pretty much had to create opportunities for us to play. Like he was involved in the local street fairs, like through the Rotary, and he got us to play every street fair because he ran the music stage. He knew someone else who ran that music stage, so he got us to play there. And then he created a battle of bands at my high school a few years before I even got to high school because he's like, these kids have nowhere to play. Let's create something. And then eventually, of course, once I got to college, then things started opening back up, and now there's some places to play, but you couldn't play anywhere unless you were 21 at the time. So what was, obviously you guys had a manager. You mentioned before all these gigs that you played. What was the scene like? Were there a lot of other bands? Were you like the only band? I know Glenn Taylor had his own band, but they were much young. They were, he was 3 years younger than you guys.
Yeah. It was the beginning of the garage band scene when rock and roll really, when it took over the airwaves, everybody started learning how to play guitar and had their garage bands. And it was competitive now that I think about it. And we were lucky because we played a variety of stuff because every member was coming in with their different influences to present to the band. And the band would pick and choose what they wanted to learn. So it covered everything from Paul Butterfield to poppy stuff to Motown. We did a lot of Motown, which was great for dance.
Yeah,
and
still is great for dance.
the garage bands, most of those garage bands were very narrow casted in terms of the type of music they played. We played a lot of stuff. We played improvisational. I don't want to call it jazz, but it was beyond 1, 4, 5 chords. And we had horns at one point. We were doing Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago. And your dad came in with a band from Chicago called the Colwell Winfield Blues Band.
I never heard of them. So
to this day, it sounds great. I think I still may have the vinyl. I'm looking at my vinyl right here in the living room.
You said the Colwell or
Colwell, Colwell, Winfield Blues Band. And
I see them. They are on Spotify, which I will check that out.
And if I remember, it was your dad who came in with that, and we started playing that stuff. So we played Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and we played My Girl, and then we would play Zappa. and a variety of other stuff and everything else that was on the air, including The Who and everything.
And were you guys playing like every weekend?
Pretty much, if I remember.
Like you were like sophomores, juniors, seniors. How old were you guys when you were playing?
Yeah, yeah. We were. Let's see. Your dad and Charlie are a year older than me and Andy and George.
Hmm.
But we played even when those guys graduated high school. We continued to play in our senior year in high school
Hmm.
because they didn't go away to school. If I remember, they were home.
Oh, Charlie was
Uh,
home. My dad was at the University of Maryland, so I don't
that's
know
right.
if.
That's right. Your dad did go to Maryland, but I do remember when he came home, we'd still play,
Oh, that's awesome.
and uh, and it was great because our ears were open.
Hmm.
We didn't want to just be a white teenage rock and roll band.
Right.
We wanted to, the black musicians from Detroit I learned more from them than
They're the
Pete
best.
Townsend,
Funk
right?
Brothers are the best. I mean,
Oh my God,
they're the
yes.
best.
Yeah.
They are absolute best. And in terms of that, the fact that you guys were playing constantly, what kind of, my dad, obviously, I said my dad was super supportive of us, would always, drive us to gigs. We practiced in my house. Any band I had, any band my brother had, we were practicing in our house.
Yeah.
The only thing we weren't allowed to do is play when my dad had his chiropractor practice open at the, during the day. What kind of support did you get from your parents? I'm assuming
Oh,
my grandparents were probably very much like they were very hands off, or didn't. I guess they were glad my dad was involved with something, but I don't. I would assume based on what I remember from them, they were probably supportive, but not like hands-on supportive.
I remember your grandmother a little bit, but I don't remember your granddad at all.
Hmm.
My parents were involved in terms of transportation.
Okay.
Absolutely. They were very, very involved. And I was always really grateful that how much support they gave me. When I came home and I told them I'm not going to be a lawyer and I'm moving to California and being in the music business, they were supportive. And that was, to this day, a blessing.
Yeah.
But a lot of transportation. We we rehearsed at Charlie's house. We rehearsed at my house. We did some rehearsal at George's house. I don't recall if we were. I think we did some rehearsals at your dad's place. Um, so it was a communal effort.
Hmm.
But the parents were great because we weren't old enough to drive until a certain point.
Yeah.
And even then, if I remember, your Charlie's first car was a VW Bug, wasn't going to carry a whole lot of amps and guitars and
No.
stuff like that. Our parents were really helpful, and
Yeah.
thank God for that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine Andy, moving his drums from place to place. That must have been.
Oh, his dad. Oh, there was a story. Was it you who mentioned the story about Andy's dad nailing the drums
No, I think that
into
was
the
me.
floor at the Y?
No, that might have been Glenn Taylor. Because he mentioned it
That
to
I
me when
think
we
it was.
talked.
Yeah, you're right. It was Glenn. Yeah, Andy's dad was more of a kid than any of the parents,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
yeah.
that's great to hear. I mean, that's what you need pretty much, especially. That's it. That's it's just good to know that, even because you hear all these stories about like people who were in bands, like their parents either weren't happy or they just were like annoyed about the stuff. But it's great to hear that that they were very invested and supportive of your endeavors and your passions and stuff, because that's what you just want from any parent really, is to be supportive
Yeah.
of your kids. And you must have sounded, they must have thought you were doing, sounded good enough to keep it going. So,
I do remember the Battle of the Bands we were in Clifton, and it was a big deal because I don't know if you've heard of Gary Puckett and the Union Gap.
yep.
They opened for the Battle of the Bands,
Oh, wow.
and then there were, I don't know, maybe half a dozen bands, and we came in second.
Hmm.
The band that was better than us was light years better than us. But it was a great, great experience playing in front of a large auditorium of people and being able to play loud.
Yeah.
And that it was great. That was just a high point in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
I had an opportunity in college at the University of Maryland. I brought my band, the three guys who were going to NYU. I brought them down, and we did the Battle of Bands there. And we actually, the finals for the last year, my senior year, there was 4 bands that played, and then Citizen Cope actually played after everybody. So there was a lot of people there, and then we ended up winning and played in the giant football stadium in front of a bunch of people too. So that was definitely an interesting experience and great. It's super fun. But yeah, it's always those types of shows are always really good because, especially at the Battle of the Bands, even when I was in high school, you had to realize that you were trying to get everyone to listen, not just like the people who were there to see you. Like the idea was to like get as broad of support as possible and it really teaches you how to play to an audience.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. Learning to play I still use those skills. What was it? Just the other day we were talking about that. Oh, I'm a docent at a museum here. And it's a pretty exclusive museum up in Oxnard. It's a museum of Art Deco arts, and it's centered on this. The name of it is the Mullen Automotive Museum. And Peter Mullen has the world's greatest collection of French Art Deco cars from the 1930s.
Interesting.
Very valuable. But it includes glassware, art, sculpture, furniture, fashion, and I'm a docent there. And I was talking to some of my other docents, and we all agree we have to learn to play the room, because the people who come to the museum, some come from France to come to this museum, some are local, and some are there to see the cars, some are there to see the art, and you have to learn to play the room so that you give them what they want.
It's a good skill to know, regardless of if it's not just music, but in general, how to be able to meet people's needs and to get them to connect with whatever it is that you're doing.
You bet.
I do want to ask. I kind of know. I didn't know if the evolution of the band name, which was ended up as Powdered Milk, like if it was as simple as my dad said it was, or if there was much more. Because it started off was the original name Pure Shit? Was that the original name that you guys came up with, or no?
We couldn't think of a name that everybody agreed upon. So someone came up with that, and everybody agreed. Wow, that's great. But we're never going to get advertisement, and we're never going to get hired. We knew that. So someone came up with Powdered Milk, and we were also frustrated at this process of coming up with a name. And you got to remember, this is during the age of Strawberry Alarm Clock,
right?
And some other crazy names. And we went with Powdered Milk, and it stuck for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So what what is the time, like you guys, because you had mentioned, because my dad, he said that basically when you guys were going to college, you were done. He kind of said like when everyone was going to college, the band was done. I guess that's not the case, because you mentioned that he would come back and play some gigs. What was the timeline of the band?
I think it ended at the end of your dad's freshman year at Maryland.
Okay.
During that freshman year, I do remember him coming home and us playing a couple of gigs. But after that, it fell apart. Everybody went different directions.
Yeah.
I went to school in D.C. I don't even recall where George went. Andy, I think, was local. Your dad was in Maryland. Charlie stayed local. Yeah, the band just fell apart.
And the way he said it is like that's what happened. Like people decided, like his explanation is that you guys didn't want to make it, or at least he didn't want to make it a job. So like that, but that was maybe his explanation, because that was one of the things with the Coots. You mentioned the Coots with Glenn Taylor, when that went from being like just a loose jammy play every once in a while to like a cover band thing. He was like, put the brakes on, was like, I'm going to play every once in a while, but this is not my thing. He always made it more of a joyful thing rather than a job.
Well, I do remember when we were in the middle of everything and we were all still in high school, we were a cover band. That's all Powdered Milk ever was. We never did any original music that I recall. And I know that we all sat around talking about the future, and we all realized how difficult it is being a professional musician and trying to make it as a rock and roll star. And I was the only one that still wanted, I knew I would never be a rock and roll star. I got
Right.
over that early. I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I wanted to be in the business. I loved being in the studio. It was creative. I loved it. And I knew it was what I wanted to do. I wanted to make it a career. And I think I was about the only one that stuck with the music business in that sense.
Gotcha. And so now I can get back to the you had mentioned Fantasy Records. My dad always told a story, and again, he was prone, as I've learned, he's prone to have either exaggerated or either I misheard or misunderstood these stories he told. But I remember him telling it several times that the band, had been offered something from someone at Fantasy Records, and either like a record deal or an offer to play or something. I don't know if that's, or maybe you were the one who said, hey, maybe there's a connection. I don't know. So what was the connection to the band with Fantasy Records, or was there none? And I misunderstood everything he told me.
There was a connection.
Okay.
This is how it worked out. My dad grew up with Saul Zaentz.
Oh, wow.
They grew up in Passaic together. So when I had that conversation with my dad about not wanting to be a lawyer and going out to be in the music business, at that point I was already going out to Fantasy Records to work during the summers and during winter vacations in the warehouse and hanging out in the studio. And and when I got to Fantasy Records, I heard how Fogerty was signed. I don't know if you're familiar with this story.
The Mogwais, I saw the recent documentary that they had. It was like half doc, half them playing at Royal Albert Hall. That's on Netflix. So because he was in the Army before he got signed, right? It was something like, was he in the military before he got signed to Fantasy?
I'm not sure how the timeline goes. And honestly, I hear different stories because, as you know, Fogerty and Fantasy Records,
they do not.
They not good. I was there and I watched it. And basically, John Fogerty is large and in charge. He would tell everybody in Creedence exactly what to play and when to play it and how loud to play it.
Interesting.
He was in charge. They didn't have a manager for the longest time. And part of the problem was, remember, this is 1968, 67. Fogerty, from what I understand, worked at Fantasy Records in the mailroom and gave Saul Zaentz a demo tape. Saul listened to it, liked it, gave him some studio time, from which Creedence Clearwater got signed. And this is before rock and roll became run by the lawyers and the managers.
Right.
And Fogerty was managing the band himself.
Interesting.
And he signed a contract. I think it was a 6-album contract with escalating clauses. First album comes out, it's the biggest hit, rock and roll hit, that the US to that point had ever put out. I still think it holds records. And they became a worldwide phenomenon.
Right.
And everybody overnight became a multimillionaire. When I first got out to Fantasy Records in the summer of '68, I drove into they're located on 10th and Parker in Berkeley, and it's in a little gated thing. And you drove into the gates, and all you saw were brand new European cars. Because suddenly, overnight, everybody was a multimillionaire, including John Fogerty.
Right.
After the second album, again, huge. Fogerty wanted to go back and renegotiate, and Saul Zaentz refused. And even then, Fogerty didn't have a manager and didn't have any guidance. All he had was his ego. And that is the sum of the relationship. Saul Zaentz held him to the contract that he signed. And, as time went on, he was able to make, he refused to record for Fantasy.
Right.
And he even refused to play some of the music because Fantasy was making money on the publishing. And it just got worse. The relationship just got worse. And Saul Zaentz was just holding him to his contract. And even though John Fogerty became wealthy, and he's supremely talented, don't misunderstand me. I got a huge amount of respect for John Fogerty. But John felt like he should have more than he originally signed up for. And that's why the relationship fell apart.
Gotcha. Well, but you were going to say, so just go back. I apologize. It's a great tangent that you took us on, but I guess you had learned how John got signed to Fantasy Records, and I guess you were thinking the same thing with Powdered Milk.
Well, I gave him a tape of us. Somewhere there's cassettes, because I did give Saul Zaentz a tape of Powdered Milk. And basically, Saul, right on the money. He said, I think you guys are really, really good. When you've got some original music, I want to hear a tape. We never got that far. So there was never a record offer, but the doors were open.
Wow. I might not be here right now if you guys had taken that offer.
I wish. We never found out if we had any writers. I mean, my dream was to be a great songwriter. I'm not.
Yeah.
I worked hard at it, and I never got to where I wanted to be. But that was my dream. And I don't think we ever found out if anyone in the group was a great songwriter.
Yeah. I mean, my dad wrote, I think, a couple of tunes later on with his bluegrass band. Nothing. I mean, some nice little stuff, and there's one or two that are really good tunes, but like nothing that, would be out there. And I love my dad, but he was definitely not the songwriting type. Dad could play anyone else's music, but I actually have a lyric sheet though of his that he wrote, I guess either poem or lyrics when he was working at Nabisco. I guess one summer or after college, and how he hated his job, and just like it's still on the piano at my mom's house. But that's great to know that there was an like not an offer, but like that he was telling the truth, because I thought that was really cool, like that. Just because again there was no one else to verify it, and Charlie said he didn't really remember much about it, so that's just, it's great to hear that actually happened. That's really cool. Go ahead.
Being from New Jersey, I'm really, really glad that I was raised in New Jersey. I think it gave me some advantages. Number one, take care of business today. In New Jersey, there's no mañana land like here in California. Everything gets put off. In New Jersey, you learn to take care of business now. And that put me in an advantage when I moved to the West, because I had that breeding, and it was great. Also in New Jersey, I mean, I love New Jersey, but I do remember the first day that I was working full time at Fantasy. The first morning I was in the coffee room, and there were a bunch of people from the studio, people, the staff for the studio, A&R guys, publishing guys, and I was listening to this conversation, and they said, "Oh, we hired a new PR guy." So I looked at him and I said, "Puerto Rican?" Because from New Jersey, that's what I knew as PR.
No,
I learned quick.
So a couple other questions to go back. You would mention concerts. My dad always talked about concerts. There was, again, obviously you weren't at that Led Zeppelin show, but he did talk about seeing Cream at the Fillmore, seeing Sly and the Family Stone at the Fillmore when they got kicked off stage and they started playing down the aisles. I
remember that.
I would just can't imagine how awesome that show must have been. Obviously seeing the Dead a couple times, and he he actually said that another band that he could not listen to again was Big Brother and the Holding Company. He said they were so bad when he saw them, probably at the Fillmore East.
I always had a little trouble with Janis Joplin's pitch.
Yeah.
I no doubt about her commitment.
Yeah.
But her pitch was always, to my ears, a little bit shaky.
Yeah. And so that just a couple, like, two questions. Well, there's gonna be three, but did you guys go to shows as a band a lot? Did you guys go to, like, together as a
If I remember, we did. We went to the Fillmore a lot. I only wish that I bought the posters and kept the posters for every time I went. But we were going to the Fillmore twice a month. I mean, very often, and we'd take the bus into the Port Authority, and then take the subway down to Fillmore. And we were 14, 15, 16 years old. We were doing that, and we went to the Fillmore a lot. And we saw an awful lot of bands.
Yeah,
awful. And we got to be critical, because we knew when it wasn't right.
Right.
And we knew when it was. And to this day, the highest I have ever been was on a good night playing on stage with Powdered Milk.
Wow.
To this
That's
day.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, there's one concert my dad always kicked himself for not going to, and I don't know if you went to it. This was seeing Hendrix in Newark. I guess it was in '68 during the riots, or right after the riots, and he had tickets to see it, and he never went. I don't know if you had tickets or did you not, but I wasn't sure if you had, like, if anyone I knew or that he knew went to the show. But he said, that's the one thing, like, he always thought he'd have another chance to see him. Maybe it was in '69 or '70, but like, I guess you didn't go to that show.
I didn't go to that show. I saw Hendrix at Woodstock. Well,
and so let's talk about Woodstock. So my dad said he went to Woodstock but didn't really go to Woodstock. Like, they got there, and then he said he got sick and didn't hear a note of music and was just shivering with a blanket on a hill. He was sick the whole time. Now,
I think we were together. I think I was there.
So when I asked Charlie, because older now, much more knowledge and understanding of what sick could have meant, he did say that you guys got split up. He said a bunch of you went up and you got split up, but my dad said he did not hear a note of music. So what was your Woodstock experience? Did the whole band go together? Like, how did all that transpire?
I don't think it was the whole band. I think it was me and Andy, your dad, Charlie. It may have been the four of us. There might have been a fifth person there. I don't really recall. I don't think George was there. I had to fight my parents to allow me to go. And if you give me a second, I have something I got to show you.
All right.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi again.
Hello.
So Woodstock was August of '69. So one thing, I don't know if your dad even remembers this. Driving home from Woodstock, I was driving, and the three other guys were asleep because there wasn't a whole lot of sleep. And between the weather and everything else, everybody was just dead tired. Everybody was asleep. I was driving, and I fell asleep driving.
Oh, shit.
And I woke up bouncing through a cornfield with the corn going like this. And I just kind of eased it back onto the road and kept going.
Oh my
But in 1989, my mom calls me and she says, "I think you're on the cover of Life magazine."
Oh, what?
I said, "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Well, it's 20 years of Woodstock, and there's a picture of Woodstock, and I think I see you there."
Let's see. Okay. I can't. You got it. Your background is. Can you take the background off? Is that possible to do? Do you know how to do that?
Pat?
Or you know what?
Yeah.
How about this? If you want to send me the picture,
I'll take a picture and send you along with that other stuff.
Yeah, maybe my dad is there with you. I don't know. I mean, because if he's not with you, then he may have ended up somewhere on the hill, either sick or drugged
This
out of his
is-
mind. I don't know.
So
I
what
don't know.
happened was, I do remember your dad not feeling well.
Mm.
And I do remember I had to get up and just move around. So I walked toward the stage.
Okay.
This picture is taken closer to the stage. And I think that I'm alone.
Okay.
I don't see anyone else here. So I go down to the newsstand and I look at the picture. And my mom's right. There's me right in front there's probably 3,000 people in this picture.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
when we got to Woodstock, all the fences were down.
Yeah.
Nobody was collecting tickets. We put our tickets in our back pockets, forgot about them. When I got home, I took those tickets out and I put them in a book and, just to flatten them out. And 20 years later, when my mom called me, I remembered, I've got my tickets. So I framed it along with the, the cover
nice.
of Life
Yeah.
magazine, the 2 tickets and everything. But I do remember so much of the music. I'm really sorry that your dad didn't get to hear it. My God.
Yeah. I mean,
Some of those performances were just unreal.
I can't even imagine. Did you stay? Did you get any sleep, or did you stay up and get to witness everything, or did you?
There were times when I had to go to
Yeah.
sleep. I did wake up to Hendrix playing Star Spangled Banner in the morning.
That's awesome.
And I do remember there were acts playing at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It was never be anything like that ever again. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Like, I don't even know how you guys had food or water or anything. Like, I just don't even know. Like,
They weren't prepared up there for the volume. So trying to find a restroom and, oh man, it was not easy.
Yeah.
It was not easy. You had to have a good attitude,
Yeah.
or you were going to be pretty unhappy.
Yeah.
You were gonna be pretty
I could see.
miserable.
I mean, knowing my dad later on, when I could see him not having a good time if that was the case. Like he was good with like going with the flow until a certain point, and then it was like, but that's great to hear that you had a great experience, and to know that, like, again, my dad's stories, just for me, again, part of this having these conversations is to find out what I knew about him was accurate. If there's anything like he, kind of. Exaggerated and stuff. So when you guys after you went to college, the band broke up. Once you got to California, you were there, right? Or did you come home? Did you guys hang out ever after that?
We would hang out a couple of times after that, but that was my fault, really.
Yeah.
That I didn't stay in touch with my close friends in New Jersey. I had a whole new life in California. My name, they came to me the first time that I was getting an album credit.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, what do you want us to write? What do you want your name to say? And I just then, growing up, my parents called me Jackson, Jackson. And my family called me Jackson. And when that question was posed to me, it just flashed in my head. And I said, put Jackson Schwartz. And has stuck ever since. Everything I have, my license, any kind of deed I have on the house, everything is under the name Jackson now. I never officially changed my name. So all my friends here in California know me as Jackson. That's why I want you to call me Jack.
Yeah.
You're from New Jersey.
So, Jackson, whatever. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me. This has been an absolute joy to connect with you, to talk about my dad, to get more of his, his childhood, his teenage years, his formative years, get a better understanding of that.
I'm really glad to do this. And I'm really glad that I could tell you some things about your dad, because he was great.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I really want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of the podcast. Again, this was an important project for me to do to remember my father, so I hope you get a sense of what type of person and musician he was and found the stories about him and the people he played music with interesting and enjoyable. And if you haven't already listened to the other episodes of this miniseries, I hope you do. Now, whether this is your first time or you've been listening since the beginning, I really appreciate everyone checking out the podcast and would really love for you to subscribe to the show and maybe give it a review or, just tell a friend about us. If you'd like to follow the show on social media, we're on Instagram and Twitter, both at Dad Rocks Pod, as well as on Facebook by searching up Dad Rocks Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or any show ideas for us, or just want to give us a shout, you can always email us at dadrockspod@gmail.com. Now, before I go, I'd like to say something. If your dad is still alive, give him a call. Shoot him a text. Just tell him you love him. And if you have kids, give them a hug and tell them the same thing. You never know when you won't have that opportunity again. So, I want to say thank you again for listening. And remember, dads, you rock. And Dad, I love you.